In today's video, I am going to be crocheting a dress for my last sculpture. Praise the Sun, I called it. I decided to start this process by making a green base, basically just a large circle that would be larger than the bottom of the sculpture. That's because I wanted the dress I crochet to be form-fitting. And because of the shape because I want to preserve the shape of the body that I carved, because I had to do a lot of trial and error to get the right shape I wanted. So to make it invisible fully would be unsatisfying. So the idea here would be that though the dress would be kind of pulled up by the geometry of the sculpture, I could sew it to the base, which would prevent it from going too high and bunching up higher on the sculpture. And I chose the color green because that way I can imagine that this is a grass, and that she's standing in tall grass or something, bathing in the sun, which I thought was a good image. And I also, because of the way I was going to crochet this, I knew there'd be a lot of tail ends to hide or so, and I didn't want to bother sewing all of the ends of my crocheting. So I decided that I would hide it underneath the sculpture in a pocket of sort formed by this base and the dress. This the yarn I'm using here for the grass is a lot thicker than the yarn I'm used to, so it was somewhat of a struggle. I'm not yet experienced enough to be able to gauge and like all the yarn I used since the beginning of my journey with crochet has been the exact same size of yarn, different color, but the same brand, same everything. So going from that to a bigger hook, a bigger yarn, was kind of difficult. It was an adaptation I was not exactly ready for, but it did go fairly well. Once I was satisfied with the size of the grass patch, I started work on the dress. The way I approached making the dress was first I would make a foundation, and then I'd make panels of sorts to stitch to the foundation. The foundation I chose is the color of the dress because that's the it has a specific shape. I want it to have a bit of a V-neck, and it runs and a line that goes from the collar to the bottom in the front. The initial idea was to try to directly crochet the loop closed, but it was a struggle. It was too thin. I wasn't able to do it. So instead, I made a long strip that goes the whole length of the statue. Then I went and made that line thicker with I think it's called double crochet. And once that was done, then I sewed both ends together to I think I'm going to be describing that later. It's hard without the visuals. I went with yellow for the base color of the dress because it's the sun. It's praise the sun, so I wanted this dress to be like evoke the sun in the sky. So the design I went with was yellow base with blue side panels. I had a pretty good light blue yarn that looked kind of like the sky. I'm really happy with the result. It's far from perfect, but it's pretty good. Considering it's my first attempt at making clothes for one of my sculpture. And something I'll mention right now is that when editing this, every unique panel I showed the whole crocheting process, but for pieces that are shown that are needed 2 times, like the side panels, well, I just showed the crocheting process for one of the panels and then skip straight for the stitching for the second panel because the video was getting long and it didn't feel necessary. And I could probably have cut more of the process out, but I tried to keep as much of it visible as possible without wasting anyone's time. This was the longest piece to crochet, just because of the nature of how It's the only piece that goes around basically all of the body of the sculpture, so it kind of had to be larger and longer. And I tried to shift the time-lapse speed, but this was pretty much the fastest I could go without it becoming a problem. I used the tail end of one of the pan side to start the stitching process, and I stitched from the bottom because that way I was sure it was even. And then once I'm closer to the top of the dress, I'm able to recenter it and make sure that the collar is positioned properly. Here I tied the end because it was no longer long enough to be able to go all the way up. So then I cut a loose bit of yarn to stitch the rest. Here, something I'll mention is I also didn't show most of the cutting loose yarn and tying them to to the dress to start the stitching process, because that felt like wasted time. It's the most basic thing, cutting a bit of yarn and putting it through the needle's hole. I really like this curved needle. In a different project, I tried a straight needle and it didn't work nearly as well as this curved needle once I switched to it. Here I straighten the color to make sure the foundation is correct. And I finish the color. I removed the color from the sculpture for the moment where I was stitching the yarn behind the dress, because it was hard to see behind and I didn't want to lose anything. And so here what I'm stitching right now is a transition from the front to back, the section of the dress that's below the armpits. The initial plan was to make it much longer. I wanted to go from one side to the other of the dress, but it felt difficult because of the geometry. It would have needed to curve kind of strangely towards the top, or I didn't like it, so instead I made 2 panels, again with double crochet, that go from the front to about the center of the back. These panels were kind of weird, and they sit a bit weirdly on the sculpture, but I don't really see how I could have done differently, considering the way I carved this statue. And stitching here was the first one. The stitching was kind of a struggle because everything was loose and there was not much structure to work with. But as the project progresses, it becomes easier and easier to stitch new parts onto it, just because there's more structure to stitch to, and it's less loose, so it's more easier to grip. And I tried to keep all of the tail ends towards the back as much as possible, because then it would be easier to hide them, I thought. Yeah, it was pretty easy to stitch once the process was begun. And when I needed to go from one side to the other to stitch, I hid the transition on the side of the panel that was going to be hidden by itself, so that I could go from one side of the sculpture to the other with the same yarn, to try to avoid cutting too much yarn for no reason. And here I'm making the back panel. The way I wanted just the side panels to be blue and everything else to be yellow, so I needed a back panel. And here you can see me, you saw me measure the yarn against the sculpture, and I should have added a little bit more length everywhere, because though I knew I was going to be stitching the dress to the grass, I didn't think I'd have to fold the grass back up, because the dress went way higher than I thought it would once everything was tightened up. So a bit more length would have allowed the excess to be sewn directly to the grass without having to fold back up the grass. It doesn't make sense that much right now when I say it, but it will make more sense once we're later in the process. I did consider making the back panel swoop to the bottom of the front panel, but I thought it would be a bit too hard to deal with trying to fill the triangular gaps. I don't currently know exactly how I would make a triangle. I have some ideas, but I didn't want to try it out for this. And for the back panel, I made it much wider than the other panels. I made it 3 double crochet wide, is how I would describe it. But do bear in mind, I don't know if I have the correct nomenclature for these things. I'm more of a I learned how to make a circle, and from that I just try to figure out by myself how to do things. So I think the tutorial called this kind of crochet a double crochet, but I don't know. I'm not an expert, and I don't really care much for the terminology. As long as I'm able to do it, that's all I care about. The speed of the time lapse for the most of the video is 6 times speed. I tried any higher than that and it would be unwatchable, and any slower than that and I'd have to cut a lot more in order to fit in a reasonable time frame. Like, I don't have that much to say about the process to fill like an hour. So it was a very difficult balance to strike. And here I got a bit more practice with crocheting with thicker yarn. My sky blue yarn was the same thickness as my green yarn. So it was good practice. And once I start stitching this blue yarn to the rest of the dress is really when it starts coming together. I think I should have made the blue panels a little bit wider, because once I start stitching them, it pulls the dress a bit too tight. I should probably have given myself a bit more leeway. The dress would have been a bit more straight, a bit more reasonable. I think that's not symmetrical. I'm not exactly sure what I want to say. I'm really not in the dress and clothes market, so I don't really have the vocabulary to talk about what the problem might be, and I just don't know. We all have our specialties, and clothes isn't one of them mine. I might look up some terminology eventually, just to be able to, if it annoys me too much, to not be able to speak the way I want. Because I feel like calling it panel for, let's say, the section beneath the arm isn't right. It's more of a strip. But is it? I don't know. And this is a spot where the curved needle really shows its worth. I'm able to stitch both sides of the cloth at once, which saves a lot of time and prevents me from losing the needle inside the dress. Stitching is pretty fun. It's kind of relaxing. Not the same kind of relaxing as painting. It's more rigid than painting, but that's what's fun about practicing different types of art. I get to experiment and find different ways to enjoy different art forms, the different advantages each one has compared to the others. And here you can see why there needed to be a bit more width to the blue panel. Can you see it? I can see it, but I don't really have a way to point it to you. We'll see better once I try to sew the second section of this panel. It'll be much more obvious. But the back panel currently is being pulled way towards the first panel I sewed. It's just not... I had to put quite a bit of effort into sewing it with the second panel because of that. So this panel ends up being quite stretched. It's not that bad considering it's in the back of the sculpture, but it's something I should have tried to plan for better. Maybe it's hard. This was my first attempt. I can't be too harsh on myself, and it's not like I tried to have any kind of pattern ready to try to maximize the quality of it. I just went straight in, so I can't be too harsh on myself. I went back and tried to close a bit the loop between the arms and the upper section of the dress, or gaps in different parts of it to make it more close. And then I set the needle back down and started sewing the dress to the grass. It hides the yarn ends pretty well. It serves as a way to hide some of the mistakes I made when sewing this dress. So it's a pretty good deal, if you ask me. When I had this idea, I was cooking, as they say. Because I wasn't planning on folding it, the fold was kind of annoying. But since I started from the back, the fold itself can be hidden towards the back, so it's not that bad. And then the end was hidden there. And finally, the final step, making a wig for this sculpture. When I first envisioned this project, I thought I would give her yellow hair to make a kind of blonde hair. But because I fancied a yellow dress, I didn't want it to be all yellow, so a brown... And brown was the other color related to hair color, but natural hair color I had lying around. So I started by doing a circle to be the base of the wig, and then I made long strips. I'm not well centered in this section. I made long strips of yarn that I then crocheted to back onto the circle to make like strands of hair around the around the head. Yeah, I went longer for those that I would put at the back of the statue, and shorter ones that for those I put at the front of the statue. I thought about doing hair with crochet with the video I saw on where did I saw it? I couldn't credit it. It was too long ago, and I had the thought of making clothes, and I don't know. I don't remember. The wig stays surprisingly well on the head of the statue. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it would be more annoying to keep it in place. So here I smooth it out and I put it on. It kind of shapes itself to it. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good, I think. And yeah, with that, thank you for watching. Feel free to come by whenever you want. Bye.